Okay, welcome to the show. I have been eagerly awaiting this podcast since I first spoke with Stacie, and I've been praying over this. I've been meditating over this. I think you have as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And I have been asking for guidance through this podcast because it is going to be a heart-wrenching one for me personally, and I think for Stacie as well. But it's so necessary, it's so important, it's so relevant. And I am just honored to have Stacie McLauchlan on the show today. Stacie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Oh
so
my gosh.
excited.
I know. We're both like
Yeah.
bursting at the
Yeah.
seams. So let's start with the fact that what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk a little bit about your story, your son's story. We're going to talk about suicide. We're going to talk about suicide prevention, suicide awareness. We're going to talk about your organization, your nonprofit that is so beautifully relevant right now. And we're going to ask the listeners to stay present through this whole entire podcast because it's so important, even though it's a very difficult topic. We are going to ask that people be involved and support the movement that you've created so that we can get some more money to the actual vision that you have.
Right.
And we're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really strange to say we're going to
Yeah.
have a good time talking about something so painful, but we're going
Yeah.
to because we have a good connection, you and I. Really good one.
Yeah.
So we found each other through, again, my good friend Tony. And she first put me in touch with you on Instagram, and I was like, oh, okay, what's this lady all about? So I started looking at your Instagram and I saw your pictures and I was like, I'm so confused. What's happening? There's like a daughter, there's a son, there's another woman. I'm confused about what is happening. And then I started reading about you and I started reading your posts. And then I went to your website, which is Live Hard Movement. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a good story. So let's talk a little bit about all of that. So you found me through Tony, and how do you know Tony?
So Tony and I have connected through her wife, and she and I briefly worked for the same organization in 2014. I live in Seattle. They live in California, I think. But we met, her wife and I met in Connecticut, I think.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, cross-continental.
So you've known them for a while?
Yes.
Two of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So when I got the message from Tony and she said, look, this is a great lady and a great story and a great movement that she has. We need to get her on the show to talk. I reached out to you, and after I had looked at your Instagram and looked at your website, I just felt an immediate mother to mother connection. But I would love to just kind of start kind of from the beginning. And the interesting part of this story, well, it's actually not that interesting because, you know, the interesting story is really what we're going to be talking about with regard to Ian, your son Ian. But the way that you were introduced to me is I have this friend who was married, has 2 children, and is a lesbian. I was like, okay, well, can we talk about that?
Yeah. Cool.
How did that all come to be?
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Yeah, for sure. I was married to a man for, gosh, I think 15 years. I don't even remember. But it wasn't great.
I love that you don't remember. You're like, I don't know.
I don't know.
You got 2 great kids out of it. That's what you got.
2 amazing kids out of it. And the kids were about 8 and 12 at the time, and I can remember sitting on a beach in Mexico on a family vacation, just thinking to myself, like, this is not what I signed up for. I know the kids are going to be fine. Like, let's just get home and we'll figure things out when we get home. Nowhere in that conversation with myself on the beach was I like, I'm interested in girls. Like, that was not even a conversation. I got home. That was like a June vacation. I got home, and in August was when I met my future wife.
Wow.
And
you met her where?
at the gym.
At the gym.
Yeah, so sleazy. I know.
It's not sleazy. I'm just dying because I'm thinking, boy, I would never have met anyone at the gym when I go there the way I look. There's no way.
Right. You know, I worked at the gym. I was a personal trainer. I came in, and I was even like walking into a location because it was a multi-location gym. And I walked in and I saw her and I was like, like, but it was just chemistry. It wasn't any, and the only thing that I continually said to myself is like, this just feels right.
Yeah.
And who am I to ignore that?
I want to ask you a question right there, because I'm wondering, you know, I have friends who've been married to men who have now, are now with women. And the common misconception is that it's just a thing you're trying out.
Yeah.
Right. Did you hear some of that?
Yeah. Yeah. I for sure heard a lot of that. And so I did my own personal inventory on that question. And I was just like, if this were to end with Kat, would I go back or be interested in or be attracted to a man? And the answer resoundingly inside my head and heart was no.
Interesting.
No.
So you obviously felt this way for a long time and just hadn't come to terms. You weren't awake yet with it.
No, I wasn't awake. I had always had like girl crushes. And I felt like at the time, each time I was like, oh, like it's my kid's coach. And it's just because they're really nice to my kids, or they're really nice to me, or they really get me. It really wasn't about the gender. I just thought I was having a crush because like I was paid attention to, you know?
Yeah, I absolutely do.
And for some reason I felt safe.
Yeah.
So
was it instant connection with Kat? On both sides?
1,000%.
And she felt the same?
Yes. But here's the thing. It's like, and we didn't start dating, like there was that instant connection, but we didn't start dating for like another 6 months. I met her, I ended my marriage, and then we started dating secretly without the kids knowing.
Oh boy, I want to hear about that. How did the ex take that?
I mean, not well. I don't think either one of us handled it well at all. I made my own mistakes.
But you have to know that when you're in a situation like that, it's not like all of a sudden after 15 years, something's just off. Like it's stuff that builds up that ends a marriage, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were in therapy long before we even had kids. So yes, it was for sure building up. We were not well suited to each other, through no fault of each other. And I'm just not in a position to spend the rest of my life unhappy.
Yeah. And how do kids take it? No, nobody is.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we waited a really long time. Number one, just to like let the divorce dust settle if it could. Really figure out my new relationship with the kids as a single mom. And that was really Kat's perspective too, my wife. Now she really pushed that agenda, like, you figure this out. And I just think that it was a good position for us to be in, to really focus on like my new schedule with them, what they needed when they were with me, maybe what they were missing when they were at their dad's, and kind of fill holes and gaps. And then when we told them, I mean, it was amazing. Ian and Bella both knew that Kat was a friend of mine. Bella was a little bit different. She was 13 at the time. And she said, you know, Mom, she's like, I'm 150% supportive. Like, I get it. I love it. And I've known.
Wow.
But what I'm not ready for is, I'm not ready for any posts on Instagram. I'm not ready for you to announce it to the world, because I'm not ready to announce it to my friends.
Interesting.
Like,
that's cool that she said that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she also said, can you like not shave your head? Like, I have really long hair, and she wanted to make sure. And that was just her 13-year-old way of saying, are you still going to be my mom and look like my mom?
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. That's really great. And the kids were obviously well adjusted with the divorce, it sounds like, because it sounds like they probably, like most kids do when you're not in a good marriage, they know.
Yeah.
And they, I mean, they had to get used to it, because I came from, I mean, I obviously was a single mom as well. And when I left my son's dad, he was young, but I know that there's that period of time when you're a single mom that you have to kind of get used to and get settled in. And then when you have somebody new, whether it's a male or female partner or whatever, then, then there's still that whole adjustment that has to happen. And that takes time.
Yeah. Well, and I think because Kat was a girl, like there was never anybody that was going to take their dad's place. There's never anybody really trying or vying for that or had that ego there.
Right.
So it was really put them in an accepting position.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I took them to therapy after the divorce. And that's exactly what the therapist said. These are two of the most well-adjusted kids.
So great.
She's like, now you two, maybe not so much, like when she was pointing to the adults in the room, but these kids are fine.
Yeah. That's so great. So, okay. So now you were dating, you got married, when? Well, actually not that long ago.
Yeah. No, we've been together 8 years, or we've known each other 8 years, and we just got married last August. So
my gosh.
We just celebrated a year.
You know what? I saw that on Instagram and I was like, wait, I had to figure that out. And I figured, it's probably because it wasn't legal. So
No. It was legal. It had been legal for a while, but Kat is also substantially younger than me. So I just wanted to make sure she was sure.
Well, now, what do you mean substantially younger? She's not that much younger.
16 years.
Okay, maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
but still, when your hearts are aligned.
Yeah, this is what I say too. I'm like, Ellen and Portia are 16 years apart. So if they can do it, I can do it.
Exactly.
I'm Ellen.
I love, you are? Okay, good. I love those two so much. Oh my gosh. I know.
Yeah.
So we're kind of setting the stage here for a couple of reasons, because what ends up transitioning in the last, 3 or 4 years, I want to make sure that the listeners understand that we are walking into a relationship that was filled with love, that was very well adjusted. Yeah. The kids were great. The kids, the Ian and Bella had a great relationship. Yeah. And you guys were a wonderful family unit of 4.
Unstoppable.
Right? You had to have a very good relationship with your kids and very open. I mean, I can tell that just from our initial connection. Yeah. And I can only imagine what Kat's like. She's probably amazing as well. So there's just a feeling about you that's very approachable, very authentic. So I could imagine that the kids felt extremely supported. How did Ian feel about you and Kat? Since we talked about Bella, how did Ian feel? He was on board too.
He was so on board. The first thing he said was, can she stay forever? And I was like, no promises, bud, but we are good and we are here to support you, but she's going to stay in your life forever. And the two of them really are two peas in a pod, Kat finally had her little dude to be able to just run to Home Depot and pick up some projects to nail together. And they were always building something, or they'd go on like midnight Target runs and just be goofballs. And
I love it.
I'm like, okay, see ya, I'm gonna take a nap.
What does Kat do for a living?
She's a firefighter for Seattle.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So she's in the middle of a lot of things.
Yeah.
So little did she know that she was placed in your life for a number of reasons, not just for you as your partner, but she was placed there for Ian. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny that you talk about that placement. Before we even started a relationship, she had told me that she was going to become a firefighter and that was her goal. And for me as a mom, I was like, oh gosh, like, I don't know how you could show up to the scene of an accident knowing that there's nothing that you can do. If, some accidents, yes, but some accidents, no, there's just nothing that you can do. They're gone. And she said to me, I would just want to be there to hold and support that mom. Wow. And that it was just so powerful to me. And at the time, it just spoke to how much value she placed on the role of mother, in spite of all of its hardships. And I was so thankful for that moment. And that really became the moment where, she and I spent the next 5 years just doing whatever we could to get her into a program, into a department that was big enough to be able to support her needs. And that was Seattle.
Yeah. It's a very significant thing that she said that, because it's going to come into play in years to come between the two of you. Yeah. It's just so amazing. I mean, your story, I have to just say that, when I started this podcast series and decided to do what I'm doing, this is a topic, topic of suicide that as a mother of a child who is an addict, it's very close to my heart, right? Because every time you think about the using of drugs, especially the amount of drugs that my son has used, and at one time, over the years, there's always this feeling deep down that, and it's kind of the unspoken that people don't talk about, like, what if he overdoses? What if something happens to him? What if he gets shot because he's buying drugs from someone, or he's selling drugs, or there's just those things that go through your mind around a traditional mindset of there could be an accidental overdose, there could be an intentional overdose, there could be whatever. And it's something that plagues your mind a lot in the role that I have played in my son's life as a support system to an addict, where it can be super challenging, I would imagine, is to be in a situation where you don't have any of that. You have a well-adjusted person. You have a close relationship with your child that is very open and honest, and it still seeps in somehow, and you don't know how you're going to deal with that, right?
Yeah. And I was going to say, I was just going to jump in and add that with Ian and who he was as a child, like, I had those same worries, even though he was just 14. I had 14 years with him. I think the thing about my worry as a mom, because he was such like a risk taker that I was going to lose him to something, that I had an impermanence to him as a mom, whether it was going to be that he was going to fall in love early and fall in love hard, or he was going to have some sort of exposure to something that would, you know, take his life. There was just always that sense of worry, where I never had that with Bella.
Do you think it was because I saw some of the videos of him on your website. Do you think it's because he was just so like, he was a daredevil?
He was, yeah.
He did all kinds of crazy shit, right?
Yeah, yes. Yes. I mean, yeah. And from very hot,
young,
from a very young age, he was climbing something. He was, you know, jumping off jumps, mountain biking, you know, aggressive sports, you know, but he was a good kid.
Yeah.
He was kind, so kind, but he was a risk taker as well, physically.
So you kind of thought like he might. Yeah. Did you ever think like he might get into drugs? No. Yeah. You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all parents think that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was never that type of kid. Like, I didn't. I had siblings that did, but I don't know. I just had like this weird feeling. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it because there was no proof or history of addiction in our family, really. But I was like, oh, like he was also easily influenced, I would say, you know, went along with the cool kids, wanted to be with the cool kids, kind of a thing.
Okay. But that's not anything different than a lot of kids out there, right?
No. Yeah. And so that fear in me didn't seem like it would. It definitely felt like other parents had that same fear.
Sure.
I didn't feel out of sorts with it.
So let's talk a little bit about the mental health component, because I think that's a big part of why someone would decide to take their life. So did you have a feeling at any point in time that he was suffering from depression? Was there a vibe about it at all?
No. I would say in the last 6 months of his life, there were other things that I was a little bit more worried about.
Okay.
But also I could easily quantify it into, or qualify it into, he is 14.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Like, there's a lot of shit going on. And so we just led our household with love. And there was one instance about 6 months before he died, and I had him for the weekend, and Bella was already driving at that point in time. So she was off gallivanting with friends. And, you know, he had said to me when I was like, oh, like, do you want me? I'll drive you anywhere, you and a friend, whatever you want to do. Like, let's just go do it. And he's like, I don't really have any friends. And I was like,
yeah, I mean, he looked pretty popular to me from all the videos. I'm like, what? This kid's loved. He's so loved.
Yeah. And maybe he meant at that point, like, he just didn't have anyone so innately close to him. He was friendly. He had a lot of friends. I just think maybe at that time he felt more comfortable sitting at home. And so I was like, okay, like, I didn't push him on it at all. I also didn't tell him that what he was saying was untrue. Yeah. Because it was what he felt at the moment. And so I did, I did end up emailing his school, his counselor, and a couple of teachers, just saying, hey, like, can you just like observe for a week and let me know what it is you're seeing? This is what Ian said to me. And I just want to make sure that I'm not ignoring anything that could be happening. And they came back a week later with, this kid is always surrounded by 15 kids. He's the center of humor. All of his
Mm-hmm.
teachers say he works so well in groups as well as independently, oftentimes as the class clown. So yeah, like I felt like I had done what I needed to do to just double check,
Yeah.
trust what he was saying, but also verify.
Right.
And that really kind of like talked me out of diving into it even further.
Well, and I can't even believe how in tune you were with just that one instance, because a lot of parents probably wouldn't have done that. I mean,
Yeah.
I know, speaking from my own experience, there was a time when Cole came home from school. He was probably what grade was he in? He was probably in like third grade or fourth grade. He was probably like 9 or
Mm-hmm.
10, somewhere in there,
Mm-hmm.
9ish. And he came home and he was like, Mom, this is when he first was being bullied a little bit. And I
Yeah.
didn't really realize it was actual bullying, that was really happening. I was a little bit of denial, I think, about that. But he came home and he was like, Mom, some kids on the playground at recess were calling me names, and it really hurts my feelings. And I remember saying, well, what were they calling you? And he said, well, they were making fun of my voice and they were saying I sound like a girl.
Mm.
And I said, oh, honey, that's, you're special. You have a great voice. You're happy. I looking back, I didn't sit down. I didn't take it seriously. I didn't sit
Yeah.
down and go, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Right. Let's
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
how you're feeling. I mean,
Yeah.
we all can play Monday morning quarterback and go back in time. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've done this 1,000 times with your
Yes.
situation,
Yeah.
and beat yourself up over it,
Mm-hmm.
and take all this blame and shame and all of that. And it serves no purpose, right?
No.
It serves no purpose. And I will say to him even today, like, I should have known XYZ. And he's like, Mom, what you did the best that you could. There was
Mm-hmm.
no way you could have known that XYZ was happening.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking to you.
Right.
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 And I want to say that because I have a hunch that you've done some beating up of yourself,
Yeah.
uh, which makes sense. And I don't believe you would have known. It's the same thing my son said. He wasn't
Yeah.
talking to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I wholeheartedly believe that he did his best to keep what was going on inside his head and heart, just with himself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he was also that person that would take that on for his friends too.
Mm-hmm.
Post mortem, when I went back and I spoke at his school, like I had kids coming up to me saying single-handedly that Ian had stopped bullying for them, and that it took somebody with his presence and his heart to be able to, speak to the cool kids or to the bullies in the school and really stop it. And I was so happy to hear that Ian, as much as he was like a part of this cool crowd, like that he really was love. He was
Yes.
love for everybody. And that just really spoke to me, but it also spoke to who he was as a kid when he was here, that he was comfortable being that for everybody, but maybe he didn't have that connection with anybody to be able to share
Yeah.
what was going on.
What was going on?
Yeah.
So did you, we talked a little bit about this. Like, I just want to
Yeah.
know this, and I know listeners probably want to know.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of shame that came around this? Did a lot of people come to you and say, how did you not know, Stacie? How did you not know that he was down?
Yeah.
I asked this question not because I believe that, but because
Yeah.
I've had that question asked of me,
Mm-hmm.
of my own son's issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I just know how absolutely infuriating it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know how you've
Yeah.
handled that, because I think if someone is in this right now, is going through what you're going through,
Mm-hmm.
whether they've lost a child or a loved one, or you know, they're dealing with some issues and they're listening
Mhm.
to this right now, I want to be able to remove the stigma of shame
Mhm.
as much as
Mhm.
we can around it, because that to me is like a second death.
Yeah.
You almost are going through another morning when someone
Mhm.
says to you,
Mhm.
Dawn, how did you not know that your son had these issues? How did you not know your
Yeah.
son was doing heroin, was
Right.
taking all these drugs, you know?
Mhm.
And I never understand, Stacie, why someone
Mhm.
would ever ask a parent that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I really want to know your feeling about it, because I'm angry still
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Clearly in my
Yeah.
own world. And now
Yeah.
I'm angry for you, because I feel
Yeah.
like somebody has probably said that to you multiple times, and I want to
Yeah.
know how you handled it.
Anybody closest to me
Hmm.
has never said it to my face.
Yeah.
I think conversations have happened on social media. I know conversations have happened on social media where it's really, the blame has been around the parents, um, just in terms of suicide as a broader subject, not necessarily Ian's suicide, but as a broader subject, there's this blame around uninvolved parents.
Hmm.
And if you don't narrate or mediate that conversation that happens where the blame game happens in general, like especially if your son's name is tagged
Yes.
in this conversation, like that's a disservice.
You have a specific situation where that happened,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what you're referring to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think it's really important. I mean, you don't have to go
Yeah.
into details of who it was,
No.
but I think
Yeah.
it's important because social media is so powerful, and we all
Yeah.
worry that our kids are
Hmm.
being affected. Well, guess what? Your adults are being bullied and
Yeah.
affected as well,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
And I wouldn't necessarily say that I was being bullied, but in this particular situation, Ian's name was used in a manner to illustrate, because it is such a compelling story. It was used in such a manner to illustrate that change needs to happen. Like this is an epidemic. Suicide has felt like a pandemic before the actual pandemic that we're in right now.
Yep.
And while the post and the example for Ian was done with love, the comments in there was like, oh, well, he died, he took his life through the fault of his parents
Mm,
being uninvolved. Sit down with your kids, talk to your kids.
mm.
This is the solution to everything if you just put your phone away.
Oh
And
boy.
those comments are just irresponsible.
Yeah. And they're hurtful.
And I saw them, and I, took
Hmm.
the opportunity to step in and just say, hey, this is Stacie, this is Ian's mom, and this is irresponsible. I know you may not be talking about our particular situation, but sometimes there is so much effort put on not letting the parents know. In the best of circumstances, in the best relationships, there are still secrets.
Yeah.
And if
Right.
Ian didn't want me to know, I wasn't going to know.
Yeah.
If he was doing something to protect me at the time, he was going to do his best job at that. And so I took it personally, but I didn't take it personally. And I will say that nobody has put more shame on me than I've put on myself.
We all do that.
We all do that. And
Hmm.
when your child is struggling, you as a parent, of course, you're going to place some responsibility
Yeah.
on yourself. And if it ends tragically, and I don't care how your child's life ends, you know, I have parents who their children have died of cancer or other illnesses, and it's the same amount of shame. How did I not know? How did I not see this? If I had only caught it earlier.
Yeah.
These conversations exist.
Yeah.
And it's okay that has to happen in order to find peace with the situation. With suicide or drug use, because it seems like, to anybody who's well adjusted or doesn't struggle with mental illness, there's this logic behind making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to put it into words, but for my friends that have lost children to something else, to an accident or to an injury or to a medical emergency or a diagnosis, there is something to be angry at. I can't be angry at Ian. Like, I can't be angry at myself, because our entire world was built off of love. And if I'm angry at that, then I'm saying that love didn't exist.
Mm.
And so,
oh my God, you're literally just, I'm so moved by what you just said. I'm just so moved by what you just said. Stacie, you're so remarkable. And Ian was so lucky to have you.
And, you know, we get to share space. I get to share space with immense grief,
Yeah.
but also so much gratitude. Just imagine what if I didn't have these 14 years with him. I fought for him, I wished for him, I hoped for him, and I got 14 years with him. I will never make sense out of his suicide. Like, it's not going to make sense.
No. I want to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Because I am just,
that's heavy.
It's heavy, but it's so beautiful what you just said. I'm just, gosh, I'm just so moved by the human being that you are. Let's talk about what happened.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important. I think that there is a natural, not fascination, but an interest in what happened.
Yeah.
That's a normal process of this, so that people can rationalize it and visualize it and understand it, so that it makes sense.
Yeah.
It may not make sense to many people. And I know, you know, how I feel about this is you shared the story with me. I went online. I did a bunch of research on Ian. I looked at the videos on your website and on the Live Hard Movement website. And I just thought, damn, I wish I could have met this kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to talk about all these fabulous things that he has done and the movement as well. But let's give a short overview of what happened, if you feel strong enough to do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a very healing thing, because we've talked about this every time you talk about it.
Yeah.
A piece of you heals. Every time you share your story, you give voice to those that can't.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
And there can be something beautiful that comes from a suicide. There can be. And I think your story embodies that. For me personally. So share the story a little bit.
Yeah. Well, to just preface, you know, some of the most important struggles from my perspective that Ian was going through was really just, he was struggling in his relationship with his dad. And I'll just put that out there. I wasn't there in that house. Like, I don't know exactly, sure, but there was definitely a struggle. And I don't know a 14-year-old kid that doesn't struggle, sure, with their same gender parent. It's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
But Ian had gotten in trouble on a Friday night. And to give you an idea of how close we all were, we had this family text string. It was Kat, Bella, Ian, and I, and it was Cinco de Mayo, and Ian had texted in the family group chat, and that weekend he was at his dad's, and he had just said, my dad just caught me vaping. I'm so sorry.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, shoot. But in my head, I'm like, well, I mean, I was probably 14 when I tried smoking a cigarette,
yeah,
back in the 80s or whatever. And
I think I was right there with you, sister.
Yeah. I'm like, this happens. And vaping was such a big issue, and continues to be.
Sure.
And so I just let that rest for a little bit. And instead of responding to Ian, I just texted his dad and just, kind of got a feel for how things were progressing. And I chose to go over there later that night to take his technology away. Because, there's still, you still have to punish. You still have to be a parent in those situations. And, let's not, I could see that he was still Snapchatting all of his friends saying he just got caught and, see you guys never. And because he let Kat and I be on all of his social media.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, I mean,
that's important, by the way. Don't you think? That's really important that parents are,
very involved. And me, I call myself a techno peasant. So Kat really helped in that area because I was like, I'm not really hip to it all. And so I went over there and he didn't talk to me. I think he was really full of shame for getting caught. And he was just laying in his bed. And I remember the last thing that I said to him was look, this is nothing. This is a blip. And I smoked cigarettes when I was 14. And in our house, we're going to love you more. I said, it may look like we're spending all of our time watching you, but we trust you. And we trust that you're doing what you need to be doing as a kid. You're trying things out. I get that. But vaping is not something that we can be on board with. It's just not good for your health. And
now, wait a second. Was your ex in the room at the time, or was it just the two of you?
Well, this is the first time I had been back in that house since I left, years before. So it was weird and surreal. And he was in the room at the time.
Okay.
The ex was. And then Ian would not give me his phone. It was in his shorts pocket. And finally, I just told my ex to leave the room. I'm like, can you just leave and give us a minute? And that's when I just really, just reached into his heart and said the things that I said.
That only a mother can do.
That only a mother can do. And he just quietly slid his phone over to me. And I think at the time, I was like, he just didn't want to show his dad that he was giving that up to me. He felt good. He just would never, he was holding on to something, in his relationship with his dad. And he just didn't want to give up that control to him.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I get it. And,
well, you two had built so much trust.
Yeah.
And there was just there's a different relationship. My son has a different relationship with his dad, and so that makes perfect sense that happened.
Yeah. So the rest of the weekend, was weird. And my anxiety rose exponentially. And Ian was left alone, even though Ian had never, the last thing I said to him was, I love him.
Yep.
That we're just going to love you more. Like, I'll see you on Monday. This is going to feel like a really long weekend without technology, but you got baseball practice tomorrow. You've got your little job on Sunday. You'll have a few things that you can do. No big deal. Let's just get through the weekend, and then I'll see you on Monday after school.
Now, why did you have anxiety? Did you have a feeling that something was off?
Well, because he wasn't communicating with me.
Yeah.
He was physically, but like no words. But I also understood that, because when his dad and I were together and things were always tough, like that's kind of how I just got quiet and silent. And so I recognized so much in him, so much of me in him.
He was processing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew when I get that way, I just need space. I just need time. And he was going to have the whole weekend. But every time I would text his dad throughout the weekend, I'm like, hey, like, how is he doing? He was like, he's still not talking. I'm like, well, where are you? Like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm out bike riding. And I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't feel right that Ian still was not talking. So when you think of like the traditional signs of suicide or depression, sometimes they're spread out over months or years. Anything and everything was right then and there in 48 hours. Just non-communicative. His sister, who was his best friend, couldn't even really kind of like crack through the surface. And I was just communicating with his dad. And, by Sunday night, I'm like, this is not okay. Like, I need to know how he is. Like, can you give him the home phone and I'll call him and talk to him? And he just said, if he needs you, he knows how to reach you.
So it's interesting though, but this is not something you had really ever seen before.
No.
And so it was just building and building and building. And he.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I had come to understand is things like this had happened in that house before. And I didn't realize it. I didn't know.
Okay.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, how would you know? You're not there.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. You're not there.
Yeah.
And a relationship between a father and a son is very complicated.
It
I
is.
had no idea that my ex was doing drugs with my son until my son told me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think about that for a second. Like,
yeah.
you leave your kid for the weekend with your ex, hoping that everything's going to be okay and safe. And only years later, you find out that no, they were actually doing meth and heroin together in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would know. And of course I did the same thing. I thought to myself, well, how didn't I know?
Yeah.
But yeah,
if you're not meant to know,
no,
like,
of course you're not going to know.
I mean, and we're, as adults, his dad and I were trying as hard as we could, albeit not very well. We were trying to co-parent. Clearly not very well.
No.
And that responsibility is on us.
Yeah. But I think about that. It's like, boy, I didn't co-parent well with mine either.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
so Sunday night, you're
Sunday
like,
night.
something's, I got to go see him. I got to go talk to him. What?
Yeah. I was just shut down. Like, it was 9:30 at night. Ian still hadn't spoken all weekend. And I just went to bed.
Yeah.
And 6:30 the next morning, I don't know. I got woken up by a phone call, and it was his dad. And he's like, I can't find Ian. I'm like, what do you mean you can't find Ian? And he's like, he's not anywhere. And so I started listing off all these places. You know, sometimes Ian, like I was like, oh, like he decided to walk to school. Like he's still really mad at you. He's walking to school.
Yeah.
And the next 2 hours were just a whirlwind.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Just trying to find him. And I had gone to my ex-husband's house to be with Bella because she was more upset than I'd ever seen her before. Like it didn't make sense to me why she was so upset.
She had a vibe.
Yeah. Yes. And because she had been in the house and had seen things that I had not seen, or how like the deconstruction of their relationship, like of Ian and his dad's relationship. I think she had reason to be more upset than I really had ever thought about. And so I went over to the house to be with her while we were just calling people. And when I was on my way over, I got a call from my ex-husband that he had found a note.
Oh, geez.
And Kat was not working at the time, and she had gotten in her truck to go look for Ian, like to all of his favorite spots. She's like, I'll go look for Ian in all of his favorite spots. You go be with Bella. And I'm like, cool. His dad called with news of a note. I'm like, a note? Like, what does the note say? And he read it to me, and it didn't feel like a suicide note. It was really a love letter.
I love that you say that. That just really hit me when you said that to me the first time we talked, because the way you describe this relationship and this boy, this beautiful son of yours, is just so much rooted in love. And I just love that you even just talk about the note as a love note. It's so profound, Stacie.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get the note. He reads it to you. You're driving.
Yeah. I'm driving.
You're like, did bells go off at that point?
I'm like, oh, he ran away.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, Ian, if he could be barefoot on a beach in Hawaii, like that is where he was running away to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, he found a way to get himself to Hawaii, or he got on a train and went to go see some of his best friends in Boise, Idaho. Like that's what was in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. Worst case scenario.
And I said, okay, like, let's call 911. Let's like get a sheriff out there to like, just help us out. And I got there, I spent some time with Bella, and Bella and I went out walking, and I was like, I don't know, I just feel like he's up high. And we were walking on this trail by their house, and I'm like, look up into the trees. Like, I feel he's up high, he's hiding. And that was when Kat had called us when we were out looking, and she's like, I found him. He's at the water tower. I have to climb the fence. I think he's sleeping. She's like, all I see are his shoes. Just head this way. And
she could see up at the top of the water tower or the bottom?
The bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And it was less than 3 miles away, but it was the longest drive.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
The longest drive.
And was Kat pretty, did she know what was going on at this point?
Yeah, like she had been with me the whole weekend.
Yeah, but did she know what was going on with Ian at this point? Like that he...
Yes.
Okay, she did. But she didn't say anything on the phone. Okay.
No. She knew about the note. She involved at every level. Just how do we solve this and get our boy back?
Yeah.
You know? And then when we got there, the water towers are set back in the woods quite a bit. It's like a long driveway down. And Kat was already back out front. at her truck. And as when we were getting out of the car, she just put her hand up.
Like, stop.
And she stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're doing so great. You're doing so great, girl. I am with you. I am sending you so much love right now.
Thanks.
Oh,
yeah.
You're doing great.
And then I heard Bella behind me drop to the ground.
Mm.
And I knew that that's where I needed to be. I knew that that's where I needed to be, was with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what we had found out later, after the investigation had taken place, is the night before, Ian had walked the 3 miles from his dad's house to these water towers. And he used to go there, like, I know this isn't legal, but he used to go there and take pictures of the sunset.
Yeah, he liked to be up high, right?
He liked
and
to
take
be
pictures.
Up high. Yeah,
he liked it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a video camera that turns on, like a motion detector video camera. And so what the investigators had told us was that he had gotten there, and climbed up. And he did jump. Like, it wasn't a fall. It was a jump. And he wasn't up there for very long. From the moment the camera turned on to the moment that it turned off was 8 minutes.
So he had his mind made up what he wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting part about that is because he loved being up high,
mm-hmm.
and he loved to, take pictures from, he was always, and he's a risk taker, right?
Yeah.
With all the acrobatics and things that he liked to do, like, that probably honestly felt comforting to him.
Yeah.
I know that sounds that's kind of a weird way to say it, but right? Wouldn't you think?
Right.
Wouldn't you say? Okay.
Yeah. And then it really, the next 8 hours was really about taking care of the kids, taking care of Bella and her friends, and taking care of Ian's friends that showed up after school. And we had like this very small house in this part of Redmond, and very small piece of grass, because the houses are so close together. And I probably had 100 kids on my yard, on my lawn that day. And it was so comforting to me to be that place where they could be. Like, I don't even know how I was standing up. I don't think anybody else knew how I was standing up. But I also have like this switch in me that when other people are crying, I can't cry. Mm-hmm. And so my job, and I love that job, really became about like being a safe place for these kids.
And I want to talk about the movement because it's so important, but I want to say one thing as we circle back to the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah.
And why Kat is in your life.
Yeah.
Right?
She was there to protect and to hold me and to be what I needed, because there was nothing that she could do. She showed up as a first responder. And then immediately came to the other side of the fence to make sure that Bella and I were okay.
And she didn't want you to see anything. She was like, you need to stay right here.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't go.
Did you first think that maybe he had fallen?
No.
Yeah. You knew in your heart.
Yeah.
In the letter, the love letter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I just love so much. He said something at the end of the letter that's really profound.
Yeah. It was the first time that I had heard the phrase "live hard."
Yeah.
And he ended the letter, he chose to just tell people that he loved them, tell his family, tell his friends, tell Bella that she was his one and only. But at the end of the letter, he was like a mission statement that he had hoped that we would choose to live hard. And he ended it with a quote that we've all heard but taken for granted, that not all who wander are lost.
I love that so much.
Yeah. And like it was weird because we didn't share that letter with anybody, the contents of it, right away. In fact, it immediately went from our hands to the investigators' hands. We didn't have a copy of it or anything. And right away, all of his friends started using that hashtag, on social media.
Did they know about it? No.
They didn't know about the letter.
No, but they knew about the Live Hard.
Yes. So it must have either it was something that was going around,
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was Ian. Like it was Ian through and through.
So that's what motivated you and Kat and Bella to start the nonprofit foundation for suicide prevention and awareness called Live Hard Movement. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Let's get people to participate. Let's get people to donate. Let's talk about it.
Well, it was really born, and we sat on it for a year. Like we thought about it within the first, I'd say 6 months. And then we sat on it for a year after that. And the idea is really to create spaces for kids to show up authentically and be themselves.
At people's homes or at a specific area?
To start out with, at people's homes. To start out with, at my home.
Got it.
Because I'm a mom and I'm not done feeding an army of kids.
I love it.
Yeah. I grew up that way where my parents, just wanted to be the hub.
Yeah.
For all their kids and all their friends. And I wasn't done introducing Ian to the world.
Yeah. You're never going to be done with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to join forces with you on that.
Yeah. I'm not done. The only way that I can illustrate how special he is to tell this horrific story that is it's a living nightmare. But the Live Hard movement was really, we started off by just doing Thursday night dinners. Every Thursday night, come to my house. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from, what school. I just wanted it to be middle school through high school and college. So think 12 to 22.
How many kids did you have?
Sometimes there would be 5. Sometimes there would be 15. One night, based off of another suicide in the neighborhood, there was 250.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, we had to find a different place to have the dinner and get some help,
absolutely,
with food. But there's this apathetic response when a child loses somebody. There's an apathetic response from schools and sometimes from parents that they shouldn't be bothered by this loss. That they're not a close friend. Why is this affecting you the way that it is?
Oh, I gotcha. That's important to talk about. Yeah. And your message is it can happen to anyone. It touches everyone. What else?
Yeah. That the other piece of it is that you as a child, as a teenager, as a almost fully functioning adult, can show up and share the hard shit, and nobody's not going to believe you in this space.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to tell you, just get over it. And we're just going to treat each other with empathy and connection and community. And just really put some value to the feelings that they're currently having. Without saying, I'm going to grab your hand and take you to the emergency room. Because that may not be the case. Now, I've gone through some training and Kat's gone through some training. So we are well versed in what is a more urgent situation. We haven't really encountered that at all in any of our meetings, but it's always a safe space.
Give me like a couple of the key things.
Yeah. So our big piece of the Live Hard movement is, number one, to teach kids how to spot their friends in crisis.
Okay.
And if it feels too heavy for them to help bring them to safety, to reach out to an adult advocate.
Yeah.
So that's number one.
It could be something as easy as someone saying, I want, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to harm myself. Yeah. Something on social media that looks a little suspicious. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
And to do away with that apathetic response. Oh, this doesn't involve me. Therefore, like, I don't have to do anything about it. We all have to do something about it. We all have to show up and show some people, some kids, that we care. The other piece that we stand for is not only, teaching kids how to spot their friends in crisis, but we're also teaching them little tricks and tools that involve some principles of yoga and breath work and meditation, but how to find their ever evolving purpose. And it may just be a purpose for the next 6 months, but when we can shift these kids' thinking shift it from me to we, and help them turn around and envision for themselves how they can take their purpose and maybe shine some light on some other people. When you get into those acts of service, that your own healing takes place.
Like we're doing right now.
Like for me, it is healing for me to have kids around my dinner table. Even though I have an empty chair that belongs to Ian, it's healing for me to fill that with somebody that needs it.
I would like to come to your house for dinner.
Oh, okay. I'm not a very good cook, but I cook a lot of food. Yeah.
I want to sit with you and Kat and Bella and be a part of the family. I'd like to be adopted.
Sure.
I mean, I feel like you would just be so fun to hang out with.
Actually, Kat's the cool one. I'm not.
Kat is? Oh, good.
Yeah,
we need
Kat's
to get her on next.
Yeah.
So pre-COVID, this is what you were doing, and other families were participating. Now, how are you supporting others?
It's hard because there's something to be said with, breaking bread with people like right in front of you. And we did a couple Zoom calls.
Yeah.
And it felt okay, but now it's really like kind of one-off. Like I'll get a text message from someone, the night before, a kid who's been to our dinners, and he's like, I miss you guys so much, and I'm like, hey, come out. We're doing some work on the yard, and just come out whenever. If you can get a ride out here, just come hang out with us.
Yeah.
And that when we're doing something, like last week, it was like throwing rock. We're building this rock wall in our yard, and we had a couple kids come over and help us. And that's when they open up and tell us how hard things feel.
And could you do, when you've got them over there and all that, can you do some kind of a social distancing event?
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's wise right now. We see it happening at college universities.
Yeah.
You know, Kat has, being with the Seattle Fire Department, she has, you know, just some exposure to the stats and the data that's out there. And it just doesn't feel socially responsible to us to
Mm-hmm.
bring even 10 kids together.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, so we're doing more one-off things. We're also taking this time to um, build a curriculum for a camp, a two
Oh
and a
my
half day
gosh.
camp for when
Yes.
things open back up. And the
Yes.
2.5 day camp is really, it's school agnostic. So I don't want to take 40 kids from one school. I want to take 40 kids from all different schools and bring them in so then they can go back to their schools and kind of bring the Live Hard movement to life in a way that feels right for them. The other component is a movement has to move. So I really want to find like-minded moms or
Yeah.
dads
Mm-hmm.
that want to get their kids' friends together and hang out at the dinner table
I
and
love it.
teach them just a little bit about how to open up the dialogue and, you know, share love and food at the same time.
I mean, this is just such a great idea. And you have raised quite a bit of money, but
Mm-hmm.
and that was to go towards helping with the dinners and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, at first it was just, you know, for the dinners, like to help me
Yeah.
fund the dinners. And now what we have raised will pay for one camp. So that's about $10,000.
Okay.
That'll put 40 kids into a camp. Okay, so the whole idea behind the camp is really to have it so like beautiful food, beautiful presentation, stunning accommodation, DJ,
Love it.
lots of movement, because the idea is through physical movement, through connection and community of the people that are there, to the food that you put into your body, to the music that you hear in your ears, that it becomes this atmosphere that you can't help but feel it in your bones
Mm-hmm. And feel good.
and feel good. And then the idea behind having a full-time photographer and videographer there is to have beautiful shareable pictures, because it's all about the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that allows the kids to stay present and know that they'll have a stream of 1,000 pictures by the end of the night to be able to share on their platforms.
I'm coming to this. I'm coming
Yeah,
to this camp and I'm going to just blend right in as if I'm one of the children. You'll never know.
pigtails.
I do want to tell you something. I
Yeah.
have a girlfriend who I have to introduce you to, who's very important to me in my life. And she runs a company that has wearable mental health art, wearable
Oh,
jewelry.
yeah.
Her website's called Happy's Better,
Oh,
HAPPIES Better. You need to look it up. And you guys got to get connected so that she can help provide some swag for
yeah.
this event. And what's even better, because she has her own mental health journey, she's going to be on my show as well,
Oh,
is um, she actually does a lot of this stuff right now. She goes and talks to kids. She
wow.
goes into schools. She does
Yeah.
workshops. It's all around breath work, movement. You
Mm-hmm.
guys are going to be dialed in.
Yeah.
I can't wait
Yeah.
for you to
I'm,
meet her.
I'm starting my certification process in September.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is your new calling.
It really is. Yeah.
And I mean, who would have known how great you're at it, great you are at it, you know?
You know, it's so funny how these things have just, you know, even from like the words that I piece together, like I never used to write the way that I write.
Oh, you're writing. Yeah. Your blogs and your stuff on the site. I was just like, wow, like we are connected on that level for sure. I
Yeah,
was like, wow,
yeah.
she writes so beautifully.
Art is healing.
It's so healing.
It's so healing. And I don't know, it's so important, as much as it is important for me to like still continue to introduce Ian to the world. But I don't know how to do that without describing the hole
Yeah,
that's left without him here.
absolutely.
And that's the that's the painful part, but
Yeah.
like I'm grateful for that, where that all comes from too.
Well, and being grateful for the fact that had you not gone through what you had to go through, you wouldn't be able to have as much impact in helping so many others. And
Yeah.
that's what you really have to look at.
Yeah.
It's coming from a place of being a thriver, survivor, thriver versus a victim of
Yeah.
of like this happened to us, this happened to our family versus this this happened for a reason for us to be able to reach more people, to talk about the story, so that
Yeah.
even if you hit one voice that
Hmm.
speaks up, one person that says, you know what, I remember listening to that podcast, or I remember looking at that blog, or I remember that Instagram that Stacie did
Hmm.
about, talking about how I'm feeling.
Hmm.
And maybe I'll just go talk about it to a mom, or to, I mean,
Yeah.
to a friend versus my
Yeah.
mom or my dad,
Yeah.
or a resource center or
Hmm.
someone, right?
Yeah.
And if someone can even feel that
Hmm.
moved by your story, Stacie,
Yeah.
then it's all been worth you
Worth it.
going down this journey,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we would wish that Ian was still here, but I feel like he is with you.
Mm.
Like
Me
I
too.
was I was thinking about him this morning, and I have to be
Yeah.
honest, like I looked at his sweet
Yeah.
little face. My God, he was so good looking. I mean,
Yeah.
you would have been in some trouble.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was looking at his picture and I was like, that is a good looking kid.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at his picture, I just felt right before our call, I was meditating about it, and I thought, he's with us right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
I just did you feel
Yeah.
that too?
Yes. Yes. And just before we started talking, there's
Yeah.
this one, and one thing that I have always said is like, since he's passed, each step that I take forward, it's led by goosebumps. So I get this feeling, these hairs raising kind of, and they go
Mm.
up and around my head. And if I have that, then I know, like, I just feel like he's with me. And so, yeah, I don't make logical decisions. I make decisions based off of whether or not I have goosebumps. And that's okay with me.
And you felt that right before we got on the call?
Yes. Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. Just prickly.
He's definitely with us.
Yeah.
And I think he'd be so proud of you.
Mm,
Oh, he would be so proud of you and Kat and Bella right now,
yeah.
because I know they're
Yeah.
very involved in this program as well, in this
Yes.
mission.
Yeah.
So, how can people
Hmm.
donate?
Yeah.
I'm going to donate, of course, duh. But how do people
Yeah.
donate? How do people help spread the word?
Hmm. Hmm.
How do we increase the visibility outside of just Washington? Like, how do we
Yeah.
get this thing to be big? This thing needs to
Yeah.
be big. How do we do it?
The best way to do it, number one, if you want to donate and want to leave it at that, that's great. You can go to our website, which is livehardmovement.com. There's a tab right on the top toolbar that says donate. And it's just a really easy PayPal link. And it is a tax deductible donation. We are a fiscally sponsored 501c3. So we've got all of that taken care of. It's just a
Great.
nice little link right there. Um, the other way is honestly by telling your own story and somehow drawing it. Like if you wanted to tag Live Hard Movement in your own story, that feels better to me than trying to retell our story.
Mm.
and just sharing it with a tag so we can blast it. That's the best way,
Yeah.
really, to get the movement to move.
I'm going to do it. I'm doing that from now on.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah.
all over this podcast. What
Yeah.
about Instagram? If somebody
Mhm.
wants to follow you and
Yeah.
Kat and
Hmm.
on Instagram, what's your Instagram?
So I have a personal Instagram, which is at Stacie with an IE MCL, but we also have at Live Hard Movement.
Oh, good.
So yeah, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But I do most of like my personal heart writing from my personal Instagram, and you're more than welcome to follow me there.
Okay. And how is Bella doing?
She's doing good. Well, I
She's
would say
21 now,
she
22?
almost 21. She'll be
Okay.
21 in October. She um, traipsed off to college at having only lost Ian for like a year. He was gone, and she was off to Boulder,
Mm.
and it was a little rough around the edges. And we have an open door policy, and you can change your mind at any time. And she chose to come home after that first year, and she's been taking a gap year working, and then she's enrolled at UW for the fall.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
yeah,
Man, I'll tell you.
she's a beaut, man. She's
Oh,
pretty
she
great.
sure is. She's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Man, you have some good-looking kids, I'll tell you.
I
You
know.
really do.
um
I have to just say that I wish that we weren't ending this because
mm,
I just feel such a connection to you as a mom, but all of the things that you stand for and the things that you say and how eloquently you piece everything together from the pain that you've gone through. It's so inspiring. It's
mm,
so freaking inspiring. I can't even tell you how
mm.
blessed I am to know you.
Yeah.
And I feel like we are, I mean, first of all, I'm coming to camp.
Yeah.
That's happening.
Yeah. I honestly think that we should have like an adult version,
Yeah.
for those that are really interested. So, that are in the mental health, and,
Yes. Great
just,
idea.
yeah, just come see what it's about.
Yeah.
Or, yeah,
Or,
let's,
especially like moms that want to talk or dads. And I feel like it's going to get really big for you and it
yeah,
needs to because your
yeah.
message is so beautiful
Hmm.
and it's not a message of sadness and despair. I mean,
Right.
it's a message of hope and
Yeah.
inspiration and
Hmm.
triumph, right?
Hmm. Yeah. 1,000%. And that feeling that you've got right now,
Hmm.
that inspiration, that just where you want to get up and like dance it out or move it forward, that's what we're about, is just keying in on that feeling
And keeping that.
and keeping it for as long as we can, but also realizing that life is hard and we're not always going to feel that. But if we continue to seek out those things that help us feel connected and in community, it just is an easier transition through the harder times of life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a
Yeah.
perfect place to end. And
Yeah.
oh, I just love you. And I feel like we are connected and will always be
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
this day forward. So I can't
Yeah.
wait till this pandemic is over so I can come out there and meet Kat.
Holy cow. No,
And
no
yeah,
kidding.
I mean, it's going to be amazing. And
Yeah.
if there's anything I can do to help support
Yeah.
your movement virtually, through
Yeah.
Zoom or anything, let me
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And Stacie, you've just been amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank
You're
you for
so
sharing
welcome.
Ian with me and with all of
Mm,
us. And
I'm so glad you got to meet him.
it's
Yeah.
just been
This
amazing.
way. Yeah.
I know it's just amazing. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.